Hey everyone, recently I've been seeing a couple of guide videos being released for snipers, and although they are good, I've been seeing a bunch of mistakes or problems that they don't really mention. So, I created the Advanced Sniper Guide to help you with all the issues you might still have. This is going to be the most in-depth guide video you've seen for snipers and the best one as of right now. So, if you're planning on getting into Strinova and playing sniper, this is the video you're going to want to watch. And one last thing. If you would be so kind as to give a poor soul a subscription on this forsaken platform, he would be most grateful for your generosity. Additionally, if you like this type of content, you should join my Discord. The link will be in the description, so check it out. So let's start this guide with a quick overview of what a sniper's job is, what they're capable of, and their objectives in a round. A sniper's main priority in Strinova is to deny space from enemies and to shut or slow down pushes. Many players use snipers as a way to get quick picks, and while that can be done, in most scenarios, if you're able to knock somebody at the beginning of a round, thirsting for the kill will get you killed more often than being able to secure that knock for your team. Which is why you should instead be using your long range and high damage potential to lock down certain areas of the map for your team. Map control is a massive part of any game like this, and snipers have a very easy time keeping large amounts of map control. Another thing to try to do as sniper is to just get advantages in team fights. There's many things you can do to try to accomplish this, whether it be putting pressure on the enemies, distracting enemies, or just being able to get a kill or two before the fight even begins. Is a great way to put your team in an advantageous position. Snipers are the only characters with an instant TTK, meaning that you're the one that can stop players in their tracks the fastest. The fact that you can one-shot players can also be a useful tool even outside of fights. The fear you can put into enemies is something a lot of people underestimate. Oftentimes, if you've done well in previous rounds, the enemies will be forced to respect you, and will choose to completely avoid you rather than go through you. This can set up easy trap plays by showing presence on one side of the map, while your teammates stack any other major areas of a map. But do be careful when doing this, and if there is any aggression, back off and let your team regroup with you. But anyways, enough with the overview. Let's get into some actual tips. First off, let's start simple. What secondary and tactical items should you bring? I'm sure you've probably heard this everywhere, but the Athena is by far the best secondary for most characters, and this includes snipers. The damage output of these babies is crazy up close. One headshot does more than 100 damage, letting you get a fairly decent chance in an up-close battle if you missed your first sniper shot. This gun is a lifesaver, and is by far the best gun for a sniper to carry. As for the tactical items, there's plenty of good options. The two I personally go with are the Interceptor and Grenade. Though you could also use the Windstorm or Slow Grenade as well. I highly recommend keeping the Interceptor as a sniper, however, as it is the only way you can prevent enemies from clearing the angle you're watching. If you played sniper for more than 10 games, you know the feeling of being pushed off an angle by a smoke and 3 grenades, which is why the Interceptor is so important. Another simple thing you might be curious about is what to buy, and what you should prioritize when buying. First off, ADS speed. ADS speed is so crucial to snipers and being able to win fights, and while rechambering speed is also important, I do think ADS speed tops it simply for that need of accuracy in tense situations. Next, of course, is armor. Now, for most characters, you're going to want to choose light regen armor. There are only a few, like Ming, that should buy heavy. Since you're going to be far away most of the time, light armor will defend you from any body shots by enemy snipers and allow you to re-peek with minimal damage after you've regenerated your armor again. Also, if you didn't already know, you can sell your first upgrade for all your energy points back if you lose the first round, allowing you to purchase armor if you didn't already have enough for it. Next is rechambering speed. Being able to get more shots off increases your chance to hit something. As I always say, accuracy by volume of fire. I'm kidding, of course. But seriously, if multiple enemies are rushing a site, being able to rechamber another bullet quicker lets you get more kills or more damage off before they either cut their losses and leave, or finally reach their destination. After that is stringified damage reduction or stringified damage, depending on if you're more defensive or aggressive. And then lastly, magazine capacity. I left out the yellow upgrades simply because I'm not talking about specific characters here, just fit them in wherever you feel comfortable. Well, this is fun and all, but you probably know all of this already, so let's get into some more advanced tips. First is knowing where to put your crosshair. Although crosshair placement isn't too important to this game, knowing where your crosshair will be before and after scoping in is very important. And when I say crosshair placement isn't important, I mean you don't always have to have your crosshair head level, but instead you need to have your crosshair head level before scoping in. When you scope in, there's a slight part of the animation that plays before your shot is fully accurate. Being able to predict where your crosshair will be immediately after that animation ends is very important to quickscoping, especially in sniper duels. This is also why buying ADS speed early on is so important. Mitigating the time needed to become accurate through the animation can help you predict where your crosshair will be sooner and let you get consistent shots off faster. Like I said, this is most notable in sniper duels, but it's also very useful in other situations. Another useful thing to know is to enable hold sidestep. In order to enable it, all you have to do is go to System Settings, go to Controls, and scroll down to change sidestepping mode. This minimizes the amount of time you spend in the 3D mode, making it harder for the enemies to hit you up close and reduces incoming damage. If you didn't already know, while being stringified you take a base 35% less damage, but that can change over the course of a game with upgrades. Anyways, with hold sidestep enabled, you should be constantly stringified in fights, only coming out to move, shoot, or use abilities. When shooting, if you continue to hold the sidestep button, but then press right click to scope in, once you fire, you will automatically stringify after you're outside of your scope again. So basically, always be holding your stringify button in fights.
In the distance. I'm under Hope economy this ends now. Let's see who's firing at us. I hear you. Have you decided?
And lastly, for our advanced guide portion of the video is positioning, peeking, and team play. Here are the general principles of positioning with snipers. Positioning is, simply put, knowing where you are and knowing where to be. When you go anywhere on a map, you need to think of positioning. Where are all the places enemies could come from? Where could I go if I need to escape? How many teammates are near me? These are all questions you need to think about in order to determine if a position is good for you. Take mid of area 88 for example. If you're playing defense, there are a lot of places an enemy can push you from, most of which you can't even see. In front of you, behind you, to your right, these are all places that enemies can approach from without warning, which is why when you're playing mid on defense, you have to be mindful of this and take a more careful approach. You need to be able to put yourself in a good position to be able to back off if things get out of control. This leads me to my second point of knowing where to be. If you find the enemies are putting a lot of pressure on where you're posted, it's often a sign to back off. Unless your team is ready and waiting to fight with you, always give up the space. Changing positions is risky at times since you're oftentimes moving without cover, which is why you need to be fast at repositioning. Knowing where to be when repositioning is a good way of making the process of changing positions fast and easy. If you've already determined where you're going to go after you've been pushed off an angle, you'll spend less time wandering around looking for a good spot, and therefore spending less time in the open and more time getting ready for a fight. This is all fine and dandy, but how do you know if a position is actually good or not? Well, figuring out if a position is good or not is actually rather easy. The only things you need to ask yourself are, how safe are you? Is the angle I have on the enemies good? How can I take advantage of this position? And do I have anywhere to retreat to? Another good example would be Space Lab on A site. You have lots of cover and can duck whenever you want. The angles on the enemy is great as they barely have any cover and wide open areas to move across. You can easily retreat to site and set up another hold, and you can easily take advantage of it by denying entry to this entire part of the map by showing presence. Next is how to peek. There's really only two ways to peek in this game, the wrong way and the right way. A lot of people when starting the game simply peek to reveal their entire bodies to the enemy. This is bad for multiple reasons. If you aren't ready to fight, giving away information like that could pull more rotations from the enemy team and make your fight harder. And this can simply just straight up get you killed. Instead, if you aren't ready to fight yet, but just want information, simply go into paper mode and look around your character to see ahead. And once you're ready to fight, slowly walk out in paper mode and do the sidestep shot as previously mentioned. This will make you much more difficult to hit as the enemies don't just have to hold the wall, but now have to guess when you'll unstringify to take the shot. Of course, there is another way to peek, being jump shots. These can be good to get opponents off guard, but they can be more difficult, so make sure you practice these. It also makes you more difficult to hit as you're moving much faster than simply walking. Moving on to our last tip for the advanced guide is team play. From what I've seen, most snipers thrive in two separate circumstances. playing with the team, and flanking. Many people try to go off on their own to maybe get a surprise shot on the enemies when they're taking space, but more often than not it leads to the entire team figuring out where you are and rushing you in a 5v1. Instead, simply play with your team and stay protected by them.
Only one attackers win.
Now, I know I just said don't go off on your own, but when you're flanking, it's okay. The difference between flanking and simply going off on your own is that flanks usually end up taking effect when the enemy is too busy fighting up ahead, while you can unknowingly do damage from behind while they're distracted. Only engage in a fight while flanking when you see the enemy is already doing something else. Never engage while they're sitting idly by, as they can easily switch focus to you. But if they're already fighting on a site, they can't simply walk back and attack you, since your team will then kill them.
Only one ally remaining.
Now, just quickly at the end here, I'd like to point out some specified tips for each sniper, Konami and Coconut, that you might not already know. First, let's start with Konami. While her ability isn't the greatest in the game, it can be very useful as distractions or getting quick information without putting yourself in harm's way. For this ability, you always want to prioritize two things: putting your echo chamber somewhere the enemies will have a hard time finding it, and putting it on the ceiling or floor. Since it has a 180-degree scan radius, if it were to hit a wall like this, you still couldn't see the player standing in this area. But if you were to hit the roof with it, suddenly you can see a lot more. This is personally something I didn't even realize you could do with Konami when I started playing, but now I do it all the time. Also, sadly, you cannot deal damage with her ability, though it would be pretty funny to see an enemy running around with the icon stuck to them. Showtime, her ultimate, is probably one of the least powerful in the game. It doesn't do a whole lot to characters who don't use their scope, which is the majority of them. However, it can be decent at stalling, as enemies don't purposefully run into the ultimate. The best use for it, however, is actually with guaranteeing a win against other characters that rely on scopes. Placing it on top of another sniper and then rushing them will force them to only use their secondary, and it can be a great way of securing the player advantage in a round. As for her awakenings, her A3 is always going to be the best. Debuffing enemies is a decent upgrade, but for an ability that rarely stays online for more than 2 seconds, it's not all that useful, especially since A2 only gives them another reason to shoot your sonar. Once you unlock A3, you can actually choose to use your ability not for the scanning, but instead as a way to buff your entire team for a fight. Shooting it above your team when attacking a site can give your team a huge advantage, and it can easily be more valuable than a second of seeing someone through a wall. And the last tip for Konami is with her passive ability. When she shoots, wherever her bullet hits will cause a circle to appear and scan enemies inside. I never see Konami's utilizing this to their maximum potential. It's essentially a smaller version of her normal ability. You can easily clear multiple areas of a map simply by shooting one bullet into the floor or wall. And finally, Coconut. Coconut is probably the simpler of the two agents, with just a healing drone and a resurrection. Her base drone heals for 5 HP a second and 5 armor a second. Also, if you didn't know, she has a passive ability of healing 2 HP per second when out of combat. Her A2 and A3 are both decent, however, I always lean towards the A3. While her drone is on someone, it gives them an extra 50 shield. Stacking this effect onto a Ming can give them insane amounts of shield and let them raid boss an entire round. Her A2, like I said, can be good, but I rarely find use of it since oftentimes teammates aren't close enough to receive the healing, or only one person even needs the healing effect, so it's irrelevant. Also, when using her passive ability to revive a knocked teammate, it will take exactly 5 seconds to pick them up again. Not exactly sure how long it takes for a normal character to pick someone up. It's probably also 5 seconds, but it's just a little something to know. And for the final tip of the video, Coconut's Resurrection Ultimate will be randomly set at the beginning of a game, but once you know what it is, the characters stay in those positions until the end of the game. Knowing and remembering this will make your ults faster and not cause you to look around for the person you want to res. It's a very tiny thing, but it can make a difference in a game like this where timing is crucial. Thank you all for watching. I had a blast making this video, and it seems like all of you wanted me to make this one as well. Like I said at the beginning, if you're interested in what my channel will be making in the future, don't hesitate. There's no time to wait. You should subscribe. I'm sorry. And again, if you like my content, you should join my Discord channel. We'll be doing a bunch of cool things over there like events, tournaments, and other fun stuff. Alright, see you later, and good luck with your games.